Hello. Yes. Hello. Hello out there. Good afternoon. This is beautiful weather. You just heard a chapter from my first book, Donovan's Word Jar, about a little boy who collected words and kept them in a jar. As I was saying, everybody asked me who was that. I have a son. His name is Donovan. He didn't collect words. I wished he had. As a first writer, I guess to me, when I look back on writing Donovan's Word Jar, it's probably like a gift that you get. Because what a perfect book for a first-time writer, to write about words. And all of us who read or write or do poetry, you know we are in love with words. And I think most people are. Most people have a favorite word that they like to say. They like to say it over and over again. And growing up, any word I heard or something, it sounded strange or something, I would have to say it over and over. And I remember my uncles saying the word copacetic. Now, I guess that was supposed to be a hip word in the 50s, and I didn't know what it meant, but I sure loved that word. So we are all collectors. So Donovan, when I look back on it, was a perfect first book. And you know, you kind of forget how you came up with the ideas. And I was doing a book talk somewhere, and I was talking about the ideas, and you know, as a writer, how these ideas come, and they come to you magically. And my nephew came up to me, and he said, "Aunt Mona, you forgot that I'm the one that told you about that book." And I said, "You are?" He said, "Yeah." And then I did remember that he was, because when the book first started out, it was about a little boy who liked to use big words, and he would get the words wrong. And Donovan, at a picnic, Dominic had said, and we were outside, and he said, "Whoo, the urination is just running down my face." And we were like, "Dominic, perspiration." So that's how it started. But as a writer, I couldn't really sustain that kind of momentum for, a little boy using wrong words. So I came to Donovan. My latest book, Granddaddy Street Songs, is a very Baltimore book, and yet the illustrator Floyd Cooper has made it, I think it looks Baltimore in some ways. It's about the Arabers, and that's the guys who go around and sell the fruits and vegetables from the wagon. How many of you out there have ever seen the Arabers? Okay, so what's the most you remember about the Arabers? The yells. Okay. And in the 50s and 60s, I won't tell you the real dates, but I'll just say 50s, 60s, and 70s, the Arabs would come through your neighborhood, and they would have their wares on the wagon, and they'd call out what they had, and you'd know who they were by the sound of their voice or the call, or if you saw their wagons by the colors or the personal way that those guys would personalize, and they would do their wagons in a personal way. Somebody's would be striped, their umbrella would match their wagons. And so they were very personalized. They'd all go down to the market, load up, but they had to do something to stand out. They had to do something to make people notice them. And my mother, who's in the audience, would tell you when she heard the Arabers, "Don't buy anything from the man with the green truck. His fish is not right. Don't get that guy, he puts the rotten stuff at the bottom." So you knew, you really identified the Araber. And with urban renewal, a lot of the Arabers are no longer on the street. You see some of them. But it's a large part of Baltimore. They were businessmen, and they were African Americans mostly. And that was a booming business. They'd get up in the morning, go load up their wagons, and sell until the wagons were empty. And I got the idea, I think, because you never know as a writer where your ideas really come from. I went to an exhibit at the Baltimore Museum of Art, and Roland Freeman had a pictorial essay about the Arabers. And I began to think, well, maybe nobody will ever know these guys existed. Maybe nobody will know about these gentlemen who loaded up in the morning and sold these vegetables, who took food to people who were housebound, who, before the Giant and the Safeway, they were the way we received our fresh fruit and vegetables. So that was the beginning. I thought we'd have some of the guys here. We may not. If I don't see them, I'll try to attempt the calls. But if I see them, I don't do it. Okay. Granddaddy, I say, tell me a story about long ago when things weren't like they are today. I recall the summer of 1955, Granddaddy says with a smile and twirls the ends of his mustache. Wait just a minute, I say, stopping him, so I can run and get what we need for a good long story. Easy now, Granddaddy warns, as I pull the blue leather photo album from the shelf and bring it to him. I slide the big book on his lap and watch as Granddaddy wipes the cover with his sleeve. I open the cover slowly. This book is so old. You can begin right here, I say, and point to a picture glued on soft black paper. A-rabbing? You sure you want to hear about A-rabbing? Granddaddy asks, as if he thinks I've made a mistake. Sure do. Let me see now. Where should I start? He pretends to glance over the pictures. He begins with the words I know by heart. Hi up, giddy up. Granddaddy click-clocks his tongue to make just the right sounds. The slow toe-heel prance of Granddaddy's horse began. Get it up, daybreak. It's time to meet the morning. He says. He flips his fingers, and in my mind, I see the reins gently slap daybreak's broad mahogany rump. Granddaddy makes his voice moan and groan until I can hear the wagon creak and crack, slip slide backwards just a bit, and then follow daybreak down Central Avenue. Where y'all going, I ask. We're on our way to the market, Granddaddy says. Got to load up at the Camden Market. There's Mike Coleman, standing out in front of his bicycle shop. Granddaddy points out as we head down Baltimore Street. And right next door is Henry's harness shop. You gonna stop and say hello, I want to know? Nah, not today, he says. We got to get to the market. As I reach over to turn the page, Granddaddy says, whoa, slow down, Roddy. We don't want to move too fast. I lean towards the fuzzy black and white pictures. Gee, I'll bet some of these pictures are even older than you are, I say. I know the buildings are, Granddaddy says. At the market, there are rows and rows of wooden stalls. Each stall is filled with a different type of fruit or vegetable. In some pictures, I see fat, funny fish resting on glassy chips of ice. I wave at the men standing beside the stalls. I like the flat straw hats on their heads and the long, shiny aprons that cover their overalls. Granddaddy, there are so many kinds of fruits and vegetables. How did you choose? It was easy. I was careful to select only the crispest, freshest, and ripest produce for my wagon, he says proudly. Who's that? I asked, pointing to the next picture. That's Peeler, Granddaddy says, looking pleased. He sure is wearing some funny-looking pants, I say. Roddy, that's Peeler's gimmick, he explains. All A-rabbits had to have something that made them different. And did his gimmick work? Sure did. Peeler had the second best gimmick on the east side. Who had the best? I answer with a sly smile. Granddaddy winks and moves on. Now look here, he said. That's my wagon, all packed and ready to go. There's a water bucket for daybreak and plenty of oats for him to eat. My lunch is packed in that hamper along with thermos filled with iced coffee. I had plenty of extra baskets. We didn't use paper bags as much as they do nowadays. And right there on my scales, I always carried 2 sets, and both of them were perfectly balanced. Now is it time to get started? I asked, trying to rush the next part. No, not yet. I got one more thing to add, he says. Your gimmick, I answered as if I didn't know. Yes, my big fancy umbrella. It protected my produce from the hot sun. Roddy, there wasn't another umbrella like mine on the entire east side, he says, puffing up his chest. Or anywhere else, I add. I look closely at the next picture, my nose nearly touching it. That looks like me. Shucks, Roddy. Now you know that's not you, Granddaddy says, laughing. You wasn't even a whisper in 1955. That's your daddy. He worked with me that summer. He wasn't a bit older than you are now. Granddaddy, he looks just like you, and I look just like him. Who do we all look like? He flips to the front of the album, and there on the first page is Great-Granddaddy Slim. I guess all the Johnson men look alike, I say proudly, and we nod. Granddaddy, I wish the world was in color when you were A-rabbing. Don't worry, Roddy. I'm going to describe things so well, you're going to feel just like you were there. I'm ready, I say. When Granddaddy takes me on his Arabin ride, I don't know whether to look at the pictures or him. I always try hard to do both. Granddaddy cups his hand around his mouth and sings out, watermelon, I got watermelons. Come get my juicy watermelons. Sweet juicy, juicy, red to the rhyme. Red juicy watermelons. Come get my watermelons. Cantaloupe, cantaloupe, honeydew, honeydew. Melons, melons, and melons. I got melons and melons and melons. I love hearing Granddaddy's calls. They sound like songs. I begin to pat my feet to the rhythm of his voice as he sings out loud and clear. If you like what you hear, then you'll love what you see. Peaches, peaches, yes sirree. Round, fuzzy, firm and right. I bet you need a bib with every bite. All morning, Granddaddy and Daybreak clip up cobblestone streets and clop down narrow brick alleys, selling to old customers and meeting new ones as they travel along. I see babies waving, kids bouncing balls, and people laughing and trying to decide just what to buy. And Granddaddy's calls help them make up their mind. Celery, celery, long, green, and fine. If you give me a quarter, I'll give you back a dime. Listen to me sing, listen to me holler. Listen while I tell you what I got for a dollar. Yellow onions, I got 'em. Summer squash, I got 'em. Got peppers, red and green. Got 'em hotter than you ever seen. Open your doors, come out and see. Don't buy from others, just buy from me. When Granddaddy stops to take a deep breath, I ask, can I join in? Roddy, you don't need to ask, just jump right in, he says, giving me a hug. Cherries, cherries, sweet dark cherries, and strawberries, strawberries, red strawberries. I got sweet dark cherries and red strawberries. Lettuce, 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 let us sell you lettuce. And red ripe tomatoes, fat brown potatoes, sweet silver corn. Cherries, berries, lettuce, tomatoes, potatoes, and corn. Cherries, berries, lettuce, tomatoes, potatoes, and corn. On and on, Granddaddy and I sing and call, looking at pictures and people from a time long ago, before I was born. And when we see the empty wagon that is nothing more to sell, we know it's time for our last call. We've been traveling, traveling, traveling far, and nothing we sold you comes from a jar. Our wagon is empty, there's nothing to sell, so Daybreak and I must bid you farewell. Whew! That was fun, I say as I settle back on the sofa. Roddy, Granddaddy says, we've been Arabbing so much, I'm just plain worn out. I point to the last picture. Where y'all going, I ask. Shucks, I'm taking Daybreak home. He's had a long, hard day. Granddaddy's voice is soft with memories, and so is mine when I say, so have I. Thank you. So I hope that this now, like I said, the calls, the guys that do the calls are much more authentic than this. But this is a piece of Baltimore history. And when we see the guys on the street selling the vegetables and wagons from a horse and wagon, it's a piece of nostalgia, but there's still men out there making money, feeding their families and doing what they have to do by this way. I hope you'll pick the book up. And I do hope as a writer that this begins a dialogue between families about their memories, be it, you know, the Arabbers or another piece of Baltimore history. As we head towards the millennia, I think 100 and so days or something like that, Baltimore's landscape is changing so fast. There are places that you go by where it used to be something and it is no more. And we don't realize it because everybody's caught up in the progress, and a lot of it is good. So I think as families, we have an obligation to kind of point out things to kids, and for ourselves to take a minute and see institutions or things that change or pieces of Baltimore history that were, and kind of talk about it and pass it on to our kids. A lot of you probably have pictures and photos and things like that that you can dig up and do. I know I go on the street and my kids, they're adults, but I say this whole block used to be stores. And, you know, maybe it's a lot now, or maybe something else is there. So it's still a lot of us that remember the way Baltimore looked, and I hope we would share those memories with others. Are there any questions? Comments?
Where did you get the idea to write that kind of book?
Okay. I got the idea to write this book from as I said, Baltimore Museum had a photo essay about Arabers. And when I went to the museum, and on the photos, I saw a lot of people that I knew. And I thought about young kids like yourself, and I thought, well, maybe they'll never know that this was the kind of thing that happened all the time in Baltimore. So that's where the idea began. Thank you. Over there.
Did you have an adventure writing a book?
Did I have an adventure writing a book? Well, yeah, I guess I did in a way. There was a guy at a community center that I was talking to, and I told him I was writing the book, and he told me that he knew some Arabers that were still around. And so I went out to the state when I kind of talked to them, and you know, got an idea about how they felt and how it was, and how they loaded up and what route they took. And a lot of times as a writer, you get all that information, but you can't put it in the book, you know. But they told me about the route they took, how much it cost, and who owned the horses and that type of thing. So yes, I did.
I'm from the era of the Arabs, and the song is a little bit sweeter than what you were projecting.
Yes, the song.
But we got the message.
Okay, great. I hope you do. But the songs, the songs are really just wonderful, and they're close to folk music. And the guys make them up as they go along, what particular day they feel like, how it impacts on them, and it sounds very good. One of the Arabers has a song called Watermelon Blues, and it sounds really good. Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah, right here.
Can you read that again, because I didn't hear it all?
Okay, the young man said, can you read that again, because I didn't hear it all. I have a little, I don't know, this voice is not good, so I couldn't go, but I have a little request of your mommy. Could she buy it for you? Okay, well, thank you, son. This voice won't hold up that long. Over here, anyway, with any questions? Oh, certainly.
Why did you get the book?
Why did I get the book? Because, I work in a library, as my boss introduced me. And for a long time, I thought I was just going to stamp books and shelve books and check books in and check books out. And then it came to me kind of slowly that I wanted to write, and I began to write. So I wrote this because I guess I wanted to real bad. I wanted to make something. I will say I went through a period, and my husband is in the audience, where I was trying everything. A lot of you out there, I was just trying to create some things. I took photography lessons, ceramic lessons, all kinds of lessons, and I would tell my husband, I think I could sing. He said, you can't sing. So, but I would go through, I was trying to make something, and I think writing is a way, making a book is kind of encapsulating a memory or something. So I went through a lot of things. There was a lot of things in my cellar that, pieces of ashtrays that looked like I don't know what, trying to make something. So I guess I did this book because I wanted to create something. Okay, wait just one moment. The lady back there.
Was it easy getting published the first time?
Was it easy getting published the first time? And as an employee of a library, I'm going to be saying library, library, library. But I work at the library, so I think it was probably easier than it is for a lot. I think my path was a lot easier. I wrote the book Donovan's Word Jar, and it was like 9 pages. And my boss, who is a librarian, she loves me, so she looked at it and said it was wonderful. And she took it to what they have, ALA, and that's a library conference where vendors and book vendors all over the United States are. And she took the book, and I love her so much because it was not much. but she knocked on every door. That's one of her gifts. And somebody took it, and then they accepted it, and we were celebrating, and then they sent me a rejection letter. And then, you know, she got on the phone and said, but you said you loved it. And so they accepted it. But the first effort that I made, I sent a book out, an adult book, because I thought I was going to write the great American novel. And they sent it back, and they sent it back, and they sent it back. And one editor said, have you ever thought about writing children's books? And I tell this story because it's funny even to me. You know, and I thought, well, my goodness, you know, you're at your dramatic best, and you're on the stage doing Shakespeare, and somebody said, you ever thought about comedy? So, but then after I thought it over, I turned to children's book. So, but it took 5 years for the first book, Donovan's Word Jar, because I kept changing editors on me. And it's a difficult process, and I guess sometimes it feels like a lotto ticket. But I guess working at the library, having somebody who was connected to the book world, that did make it a lot easier for me. Yeah.
Are you thinking about making any other books?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of working on 2 books. I don't know if anybody out here remembers, there was a society in Baltimore called the Free Excursions. And this was some kind of a society that in the 50s went to African American neighborhoods, and they would give out tickets, and you'd go down to Brown's Wharf and get on a boat and go over to an island, and you'd have a picnic all day. And my family was a part of that, and I'm writing a book about a little girl whose father is pitching against the Baltimore baseball team, and her father's not really a good pitcher, but they having a thing. So I'm kind of working on that, and I'm working on a Donovan's book, another Donovan's book. But I'm kind of slow because I'm working too. This little girl here.
Say it again, sweetheart. Say it again.
Where books come from?
Can you repeat it?
Where do books come from? Okay, I'm thinking right quick, New York, but no. But I guess they come from our imagination. It comes from one person's mind with a story. No, let me back up, I guess. Books come from our families. Because when you think about it, for me, books come from our families. They come from stories. They come from stories people tell you, or they come from stories that you see. So books come out of our daily living. I mean, I come from a large family, and most of them are storytellers. So the stories that I hear kind of makes me a writer, because a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I think books comes from our families, and that's not really a detailed one, but I don't want to say the factory. So, you know, I have to say that. Okay, anybody else? This young lady here.
How long did it take you to write the book?
How long did it take me? Okay. This kind of took a long time. I wrote it in about, Floyd Cooper, who is the illustrator, came to the library to do a workshop. And since I had Floyd there and I had an idea, I went home and scrambled the idea together. It's probably about 7 or 8 pages. And Floyd said, oh, I'll illustrate it. It's great. I'll illustrate it if you find a publisher. I know he thought I wouldn't. But I did get on the phone to the publisher and say, Floyd Cooper said he'd do the book if I found a publisher. So it kind of came out there. But it took like 3 years. I think it took 3 years, because you get one editor, somebody who is in charge, like your teacher, who goes over the book and kind of figures out what's wrong with the book, and then they send it back to you, then you send it back to them, and then you send it back to them, then you send it to the illustrator, who is Mr. Floyd Cooper. I know you guys have seen his work. And then Floyd takes a little while, because he has to read the story and get a feel for the story. So, and plus I sent him a book on Baltimore, because I wanted him to get the flavor of Baltimore. Okay. So, somebody else? Okay. Oh, okay.
Who did you dedicate the book to?
Who did I dedicate the book to? Wonderful, wonderful. To all the Coleman, DeGrosse, and Johnson men and boys then and now. So it's to the men in my family and my husband's family. That's a good one. Oh, we okay. Okay. Who's the illustrator? The illustrator is Floyd Cooper. And Mr. Cooper, I think, is probably one of the premier children's illustrator. And he does all of these with an eraser. You'd have to see the way he works. And his books are over there. He's an excellent illustrator. And I feel really lucky to have Floyd do the book. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mona Lisa DeGrove. She will be signing Granddaddy Street Songs and Donovan's Word Jar at the purple table to my left, and we have books to the right. Thank you very much for coming. That was great. Thank you.